G'day. In this video, we'll actually be looking at tags and using the triggers that we just created to actually get our trigger to recognize what's actually walking through the trigger and to take an action based off that. If that didn't make sense, keep watching. I'm sure it will over time. So currently what we actually have going is we hit play and we can walk between our posts and we get a particle effect occurring, which is actually not too bad. So it's a big yellow one. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to quickly go through and I'm going to change that particle effect to be green in color. So just a greeny color. And the next one I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through, duplicate that. I'm going to rename it by pressing F2 and changing that one to enemy particle. So enemy particle, I'm actually going to change from green to a red color. So we've got a green particle system and we have a red particle system. So two of them together, almost identical in the way that they work. The next part we're actually going to do is currently all that's actually occurring is when our player walks through, and I forgot to remove that particle system. So let's delete that one. So when I walk through my trigger, I get the green effect now rather than the yellow one. So what I actually want to do is I want to be able to say that my first person controller is a player, and then I'm going to change it to be an enemy, and I'm going to get the specific particle system to actually play or to start based off that information. So what they actually are they called tags, and it works like any tag that we can actually place it onto an object. So in this case, up in the top right section of the inspector window, you'll see the name, and then you'll see the word tagged, and usually it means there's untagged next to it. So if you click on the arrow, you can actually see a whole heap called, let's say, player. So we have now tagged our player, the person that we're playing as an actual player. So if we hit play, we can still go through it and it still plays green. The next thing is I could tag that as enemy. I could hit play and still walk through it and it still plays the same thing. So what we actually need to do is we need to create an if statement to check for what that tag actually is. Now, one thing to note is if you don't have any of these tags here, such as enemy specifically, you can actually go down to add tag. That brings up a new thing in the inspector window called the tag manager. By clicking the extend and extending the tag section, you can actually see that I've already added enemy here. But here I might go element 1, I might go and type in neutral party. So by then selecting our first person controller, we can go tagged, and we can now see neutral parties appeared in the list. I can keep on doing that, adding tags, and I could go through and let's just say goalposts. And as soon as I've actually written that, all of a sudden goalpost now appears in my list. Now we don't need neutral party or goalpost, I'm actually going to remove those. So let's remove those just by deleting, or by changing our size back to 1. Or it will default back to 2. So provide another space. So go back to our first person controller and now it's flagging as enemy. If I hit play and then walk through it, it's still giving me that green effect. So we do need to actually correct that. Now to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to create a script. Now we've already got our trigger script, so let's keep on going through and using that. We want our trigger, once we walk through the trigger, to actually see what's walking through it, if it's a player or if it's an enemy, and then play a specific effect. So the very first thing we're going to do is let's establish that that green effect is called the player particle effect. And I'll just change this one down here as well. Player particle effect. And that allows me to go through, I'll save that, reopen, go back to my first person controller, and I'll just reapply that particle effect of particle glow. The next thing I want to do is I want to create an enemy particle effect. So I'm going to just create var enemy, if I can spell, particle effect. Again, I'm also going to define it as a game object because all those particle effects are prefabs, which is a game object itself. Save that, go back to Unity, and you'll see that now you'll see a player particle effect and an enemy particle effect. So I'm going to drag and drop the enemy particle effect over. Now, going back to my script, I'm going to create another instantiate command. And rather than player, we'll actually set that up to be enemy particle effect. So now you can actually see that when we save that, when we walk through it, what's going to happen is both of them are going to be created in the exact same spot. It's going to be a bit of a weird effect. So we've got red and green. So what you've actually got to go through and decide what our character is. Now it's currently saying enemy. I'm actually going to change that to player, which means only the green one should be going off. So change back to my script. So this is where the tags are coming in and we need to actually start asking about the tags. So we're actually going to go through and go if open bracket tag double equals, because we're actually checking what the tag is actually equal to. Whereas if we had just one, it will actually be setting the new tag. So we're going to check for tag double equals, and we're going to check to see if it's player. Now, if it says that it's player, what we want it to do is we're actually going to leave the particle effects for the moment and comment them out. We actually want this action to occur. We want a debug.log, and just to say the player walked through. Now, if it's not going to be that, we could actually have another script, and I'm just going to copy this one. And rather than checking for player, I'm actually going to check for enemy. Save my script. And remembering, these have now been commented out, which means they will not run. So we're not actually looking for a particle effect. We're actually looking for the words to appear in the console. And as you can see, I've missed a semicolon again. Missed two of them. Give it 2 seconds to catch up. And there we go. So I'm going to hit play. And again, we're looking in the bottom left of the screen to see if player comes up. So it just came up, the player walked through. Now that was going to happen no matter if we were the player or the enemy. So let's change that text there to say the enemy walked through. Because if the tag is equal to the enemy, then the enemy walks through. So let's go back to Unity, give it 2 seconds to update, clear our console, and let's change the player tag to enemy. From here, again, have a quick guess of what you think will occur in the bottom left console. Okay, and it should be that the enemy walked through, because although I haven't changed the character, I've only changed that tag. So I'm going to change that back to player again. So going back to our script, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this instantiate command, the player particle effect, and I'm going to actually place that exactly where when the player walks through. I'm then going to take the enemy particle effect, cut that, and place that exactly where the enemy effect goes through. And I can tell the difference by saying enemy particle effect and the player particle effect, which is what I've created in my variables up ahead. Let's just do a little bit of cleaning, make it look a little bit prettier. And there we go. Let's see how this one actually goes. So save my script, give Unity 2 seconds to check to see if I've missed anything, and let's hit play. So there should be two things that occur when I walk through here. Again, as I'm walking around the posts, nothing actually occurs. It's only going off when that trigger goes through. So when I walk through, I should actually see, as a player, the green particle effect, and the bottom left you'll see the player walked through message. Now I'll change that tag to be enemy, and I hit play. I can walk around and around the entire thing. I can walk into the poles, but as soon as I walk through that field, all of a sudden reds come up and it says the enemy walked through. And the only way that Unity actually knows that is by this tag command. Now that is actually a very, very powerful thing you can use in Unity, because I can all of a sudden start asking for tags of if I have a specific level, or if it's a computer player or a normal player, if it's a red team or blue team. A whole heap of tags can be assigned to check for different things. Now that's a basic way of using tags, and we also used the actual triggers that we established earlier to actually create very, very powerful tools that we can use within our game. Again, if you have any questions or queries in regards to what you've seen, please don't hesitate to ask on Edmodo or in the comments, and I can definitely help you out from there. Thank you.